So today I'm going to talk about adversity, the difficulties we face on the path through life, and some of the ways perhaps that we can overcome these things, and in particular how this can affect spiritually minded people and those on the mediumistic path through life. Adversity is a path that all of us have to take sometime in life. And I believe that mediums and those people that are on a spiritual path are challenged sometimes more than others. There are times, aren't there, in life where things just seem to go completely wrong. I mean, it happens to many of us. Some of the people that come to me for private sittings, I think, my God, that person's gone through some hard times. You know, they've had death after death and in the families, and then they've lost jobs, they've lost relationships, there's children have died, there's all sorts of things go wrong in people's life, and you think, gosh, how do those people ever cope? And often those people are some of the nicest people in the world and have a great kindness in their hearts. So this adversity seems to hit everybody. Good and bad. We all have those periods in life where something makes our life particularly challenging. And I think mediumistic people have to have this more than anybody, actually, because any real mediums, I mean, there's lots of mediums and psychics out there nowadays, but very, very few of them I would class as real mediums. But those that I call real mediums, the real ones that I know, they have... all of them, to a man and to a woman, have all of them had a really, really challenging period at some point in their life, and maybe at multiple times. Sometimes it might be in childhood, sometimes it might be as they come into adulthood. And certainly in my life and in Jane's life, we've both had tremendously challenging periods where you just think most people would have completely freaked out and given up, you know? And why do those things happen to what I think are good people, you know? Because I think particularly with mediumship, when you go on the path of mediumship, you're going to be challenged. And if you go on a spiritual path too, you're going to be challenged. You know, when people come to me and say, Craig, I want to be a medium, you know, I'm keen, I want to be a medium, you know, teach me to be a medium, you know. And often if their motives aren't quite right, if it's all about ego and wanting to be on telly and wanting to be noticed by everybody, you know, I think, my God, do you really know what's going to happen on this path if you do go on the path of becoming a medium? Because you will inevitably be challenged. In fact, you can't choose to go on the path of the medium anyway, actually, because it usually evolves out of a period of great difficulty. You know, you usually find this gift in adversity. And so many of the other spiritual gifts are found in adversity. And the reason we have this adversity, certainly those on a spiritual path, is because it's only through knowing how to suffer that we can understand how others suffer too. You know, how can myself or any other medium give a reading to someone if we've not ourselves suffered in some way in life? You know, if we haven't got to the brink. You know, how can we understand someone that's in the great depths of despair through a bereavement, or great depths of despair through breakups and things like that, if you haven't yourself experienced it in a similar form, certainly on a feeling level? So adversity is necessary on the path of spiritual development. And when a person goes on a mediumistic path, I think they're given a double dose of this terrible suffering that can come into life sometimes. So for most people, the whole idea is to avoid adversity, you know, to avoid all troubles whatsoever, and never to embrace it, never to say that it's something that's good for our souls. It's often when we have it, we don't think of it as a good thing, do we? We're trying to end that adversity. And that's something we have to do. We have to get through it. We have to get back to peaceful conditions again as soon as we can, because we can't go on like that forever. We don't want to live in a constant state of pain. But we can also, avoidance of all these things can often be a bigger trouble in itself. You know, the fear to face pain will often create more troubles. Like if you fear pain so much you can't go to the dentist, your teeth are going to get worse. So you have to embrace the problem, go and do it. Actually, dentists don't hurt nowadays, but they used to. I remember as a kid. But anything that's avoidance is often one of the ways that we get ourselves into deeper problems rather than embracing it. When you do things like yoga, for example, you learn this quality of acceptance. So even the simple things such as sitting in a lotus position of some sort, or half lotus or a sitting position, can get very uncomfortable if you're sitting there for 2 or 3 hours of meditation. Your legs go numb and things like that. So one has to look at pain, for example, as something that is just part of the bigger picture. It's just a sensation, right? So pain can be overcome by seeing it not as pleasure and pain, but purely, both of them, as pure bodily sensations, And in that way we can kind of overcome problems. I remember going back to teeth again. I remember when I was in Thailand on a holiday. I had absolutely terrible toothache, to the point it was distracted from everything, and I couldn't get to a doctor to get some antibiotics for it, or to a dentist, so I was in a lot of pain, and I had no other option except to use some form of meditation to try to get through it. And so I used this technique, like I used in yoga, of observing things just as bodily sensation. And it wasn't easy, but I got me through. When I saw the dentist, so I got back to home. He drilled the tooth and it literally burst. He said, "I don't know how you ever put up with that." But that was necessity there. But you see, so if we can see our life like in the same way, sometimes we can transcend pain and suffering in our life. For example, I feel that when people are on the deathbed, often the spirits have said to me that when a person passes over, they don't go through the same sort of pain we seem to think we observe from this. That a point comes where one has almost transcended the body and sees it, like I've described perhaps, as bodily sensation. That the person is dying of some horrible illness, which to us on the earth plane looks terrible. But for the person experiencing it, they've come into a kind of a transcendent state where they have gone beyond the pain, as it were. And the chemicals in the brain will do this too, that help protect the body and protect the spirit, the mind and spirit from going crazy from pain. It kind of cuts off through the dopamine and things in the brain. So, but we can do this also in our life, But it doesn't mean to say we have to run away from the pain or from the suffering in life. We have to kind of see it as it is, We accept it, we go with it, and by that acceptance we can sometimes get beyond the suffering of it, So we see pleasure, pain, we see good things, we see bad things as one part of the whole human story. Just like we're reading a book, we read that book and we read chapter after chapter, and we don't put the book down because it's going through a difficult bit. We embrace it. We read the rest, don't we? We read the whole story, and perhaps that's just what our lives are. They're just a story. But also, it does take that time of adversity to help us to become who we really are as well. Because if you think back to those times in your own life where you had real difficulties, it was those times that were the making of you, were they not? Most of us, if the good qualities we've got, have often come out of a period of difficulty and suffering where we've had to perhaps go through some form of self-sacrifice and put another person first rather than ourselves, and that's been a difficult thing to do. We've had to give something up so that we can do something for the betterment of others. Those things bring out in us our best qualities. They bring out in us the qualities of kindness, the qualities of love, the qualities of charitableness. All those type of things come usually because we've had some form of hardship in our life. And it's an old image, isn't it? But it's a bit like the forging of a sword. It can't be done unless the metal is put into the red hot fires, and then after that it's brought out and hit with that hit on an anvil with a hammer, until it's forged into a sword that can cut through anything, And it's the same with our ability to discern, our mental abilities. These come through hard work. Our abilities come only through a form of work and suffering. A lot of people have a view of God, for example. First of all, they see God as something outside of themselves and separate, which I disagree with. It's all of it. Everything is God. But is God this goody-goody sort of person all the time? It's this insipid sort of image we see of God, I mean, if you think about it, the whole idea of the divinity, the whole idea of the Godhead is both good and bad. It's an abraxas. It's both the negative and the positive forged together. God, the Godhead, the divinity, in its qualities, because it's beyond quality, but it's in the qualities that comes into this world, has to embrace all of it, the bad and the good. It's all part of that one consciousness that makes us as people, because both on a basic level in life, we aren't who we are unless we've been through both. Our story embraces both the good and the bad in our life. And spiritually it's the same. We become who we are because of both what we conceive as the good and the bad, the suffering and the joy of existence, So like William Blake said, man was made for joy and woe, and if this we rightly know, safely through the world we go. I mean, I think I've got that poem right, but that's a good adage, isn't it? Because it's not just good and it's not just bad. We have to know that we're made for both, and that's what constitutes us as a person. And eventually, this whole process, we have to understand that we must always have hope. It was when the box was opened and all the things flew out of it, the last thing that was left in Pandora's box was hope. That no matter what happens, we always must keep hope, because in my own life, I remember I got through some extremely difficult times through messages I'd been given from mediums. In particular, the messages I'd been given from the medium Doris Stokes. It kind of helped me see my way through, and those messages came to pass, and the things that were said came true as was predicted. But I had a certain sense of hope that things would get better. And even if you hadn't had a good message like that, always keep the idea of hope in your mind, because the whole of existence is here to help us to become aware. It's about nothing more than consciousness. When you really get to the bottom of why we're here, we're here to become awakened beings, to see that all of it is the mind of God. All of it, including me, the seer, and the seen, all of it is the same. It's all Godhead. And that's what it's all about. We're moving towards that. And if every great teacher who've ever walked this earth that has experienced that state that I'm talking about there, all say that it is the most blissful ultimate state, and it's beyond compare to anything else. It is beyond anything, and that's where it's all heading. So all of it, throughout many lifetimes, throughout this lifetime and so on, if we just see it as the unfolding of ourselves, the unfolding of the spirit. And I believe that as we move forward, as we become higher beings, as we become more enlightened, as we come closer to that great treasure that is the knowledge of divinity within ourselves, then the negative things will fall away naturally. I feel that often, people sometimes experience some forms of suffering in life because they're not doing their spiritual work. If we do our spiritual work, like in my case, I like doing my meditation, my yoga, my mediumship and so forth. When I'm on that path and doing that, I find that the whole universe kind of supports it, because that's what I'm meant to be doing. And every one of us is meant to be doing something spiritual in some way, of spiritualizing our world in our own unique way. And when we get onto that spiritual path, then we don't need the prompts from the universe to push us in that direction, because it's only sometimes after suffering and loss and despair that many people are pushed onto a spiritual path. But if we get on that path anyway, the universe will support us. So that's some thoughts about these ideas of suffering in life. I feel we go through adversity because it's there as a benign power that's actually pushing us towards greater awareness. And when we look back at the troublesome times of our lives, we understand that those are the times that made us. So if you're going through a period of suffering at the moment, don't despair. Have hope, because at the end of the day, it's there to take you to a higher level, to help you evolve and become who you really are. Despair is a terrible thing, because it makes us have to do the whole thing all over again. So it's better to go with it, to roll the punches of life, and to let life evolve, because at the end of the day, we're all in the hands of a benign universe that is helping us to become enlightened beings. And that's the purpose and meaning of human existence, and why adversity is there in the first place. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. So that's my inspired talk today for you. And so do keep following this channel. Click that little bell thing that I always talk about there, because if you click the bell, you'll get updates, and you'll be able to follow these YouTubes every time they come out. And we've got lots of other things going on in the channel. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to read some of my books. You might find Messages from the Universe, for example. My book you might find that inspiring. Okay, thanks for joining us. See you again next time. Bye for now. Check out our website for more stuff. You can book psychic readings with us and find out about our public events, or watch our fantastic movie called Mystic Journey to India. It's a mind-boggling adventure that's now showing on Amazon Prime. And if you want to learn more, you can find out about my books and courses. Check out Messages from the Universe, that reveals the ancient secrets of existence, or read my book called Psychic School, to discover and enhance your own psychic skills. Or how about What to Do When You're Dead, my book about the afterlife and what it's like. All this plus lots more, lots of new articles and videos, all on my fascinating website.